Today is Wednesday, August 4th, and this is Tokyo Daily, the Olympic show from the Toronto Star. I'm your host, Brendan Dunlop. What a run. Andre De Grasse, an Olympic champion. 5 years ago in Rio, Andre De Grasse proved that he was one of the fastest men in the world. Wednesday night in Tokyo, he proved he was the fastest man in the 200 meters. The Canadian ran a personal best time of 1962 to win gold, ahead of Americans Katie Bednarik and Noah Lyles. Fresh off that bronze medal win in the 100-meter dash the other day, the Scarborough-born Markham, Ontario reppin' sprinter has 5 Olympic medals now, and 1 in every color. And if that wasn't impressive enough, De Grasse has never missed a podium at the Olympics in an event. Unbelievable. He wasn't alone in the race. Canadian Aaron Brown ran a time of 20:20 to finish 6th in the event. The Canadian men still have the relay to run at the end of the week. But what a way to start your day if you woke up early for this one. A gold medal for De Grasse. You're going to see a lot of Andre De Gold headlines on the internet today, guaranteed. I just had to get it in once. Not my headline. Damian Warner put himself in a gold medal position in the men's decathlon. Damian Warner, what a start. He won the bronze in Rio. He's first place after day one in this decathlon in Tokyo. Warner ran a blistering 10.12, 10.12 in the 100 meters. How fast is that? He nearly would have qualified for the 100-meter final, which De Grasse took the bronze in a couple of nights ago, you should remember. Warner followed that up by jumping 8.24 meters in the long jump, which would have been good enough for bronze in the men's event. Canadian Pierce LePage currently has his eye on bronze. He's third in the point standing in the decathlon. That continues on Thursday with the 100-meter hurdles, the discus, and the pole vault. Then they'll do javelin, and it wraps up with the 1,500-meter race. It's exhausting. What these athletes do is truly incredible. Canada's swimmers have gone home, but Canada has some great canoe and kayakers to watch in Tokyo. 13-time canoe world champion Laurence Vincent-Lapointe and 2-time world champion in doubles Katie Vincent are moving on to the semifinals in the single 200-meter event. This is the first time that women are competing in canoes at the Olympic Games. And if you want to feel old, this will definitely do it. The youngest medalist on the skateboarding podium in the women's park event was born in 2008. Just let that marinate for a minute. Kokona Hiraki, doing it for the kids. 12 years old, and now an Olympic silver medalist. Good for her. Japan's youngest Olympic medalist ever. Japan are the kings and queens of Olympic skateboarding, by the way, as Sakura Yozasuma won the gold in the park event. She's a 19-year-old veteran, though. Very happy to speak again with the Toronto Star's Laura Armstrong. Laura, Andre De Grasse, and medals. This is just his jam. I mean, he's podiumed in every single medal event he's been in.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, that I was still nervous this morning, right?
Yes.
Like it means so much, and you can tell that it means so much to him. Getting a gold is just a little bit different than getting a silver or getting a bronze, right? And particularly in the 200-meter sprint, like that's a huge event at these Olympics. He got bronze earlier in the week in the 100-meter event. You're thinking, oh my goodness, Andre De Grasse, like, finish this off. You can do this. And I mean, I have to say, at the Armstrong household, we were all standing in front of the TV, like standing up. Nobody was sitting down. And I really do sort of feel like Canada collectively was, really rooting for Andre De Grasse, of course, but a little bit nervous that it maybe wasn't going to happen, just because who knows what happens in 19.62 seconds. And then he pulled it off. And, it was just a great way, I think, for this country to start the day.
Especially with the way the 100-meter dash went, where no one really thought Lamont Jacobs would be a threat, and Andre De Grasse maybe was the favorite. But then, if you understand his training regimen and what he'd gone through in getting to Tokyo, thought, perhaps he wasn't at his best. He never seems to qualify as hot as he did in the 200 meters. So setting that personal best and then coming into this event, you're right. Collectively, the country was very nervous, and Donovan Bailey said it on the broadcast too. I think that's what's so great about the sport. I mean, Andre De Grasse has been the face of the Olympics since Tokyo. Since Rio, for Canada. One of the biggest faces, certainly, in non-hockey sports. But I love that, the whole country really wanted him to do it, and to see how much it meant. I also love that the television broadcast captured the Zoom exchange with his family. That was really special.
Absolutely. It definitely is one of those things where I sit and I watch particularly the track events and the swim meets, and you think to yourself, these people have trained for 5 years to run for 20 seconds. I mean, over the course of the three events, it's 60 seconds, right? But I certainly think that I can't imagine being a person who trains that long and that hard to compete in such a small time frame. And you watched De Grasse in the 100-meter event, and he was great in sort of his prelim. He wasn't as great in his semifinal. It set him up for sort of an interesting final. And then you look at the 200-meter, and he really did sort of come out strong in the 200-meter. But then you think to yourself, in the 200-meter semifinal, and then you think to yourself, like, is he going to be able to carry that through to the final? He's the clear out and out favorite in this race. As you said, his training regimen, the 200-meter was the one that he focused on this year. And it's incredible to see him sort of achieve that goal. As you said, it's incredible to see him go over and talk to his family. I loved the sort of, love you, have a good day. It was such a dad moment. And you're thinking to yourself, this man just won a gold medal and he's wishing that his kids have a great day. Which is fantastic. It was interesting listening to him on the CBC broadcast talking about the mentality of his body and his mind and his mindset. And his body, he said, he hoped was ready and there were things that he could do to prepare. He felt confident in his mentality because he was training twice a day, but he had to train sort of in the morning and then he would go home and he would have to deal with his kids. And you've heard from athletes before, athletes when they have children, they talk about, how their lives change, their perspectives change. They have to focus on something else. So I think it makes them mentally stronger because they're not constantly nitpicking about every single thing that either went right or went wrong in a race. So I certainly think that being able to see his children after, being able to speak with his partner, I think that those would have been really incredible moments, and moments that, of course, these athletes just aren't having in the same way that they normally would have. But it's really important to be able to see the people that you're running for right after you win an incredibly important run.
Well, there are a few athletes, not De Grasse, but a few athletes at these Olympic Games that are old enough to be Arian Knighton's parents. Arian Knighton, the 17-year-old American, who may just be the future of this sport. I mean, all the Usain Bolt comparisons for what he's done at youth level, and to compete with the confidence and the composure that he showed, not to get on the podium in the 200 meters, but he's definitely a threat for those other Americans who are, considerably older than he is. And looking at this sport, much like after 2016 when people thought, well, Usain Bolt is retiring, is the sport going to be in a good place? You've got De Grasse, there's a few others. I look at these games now, especially with a figure like Knighton. I think that track and field's in a very good spot.
Absolutely. And I think that, Knighton was part of the reason maybe why Canadians were a little bit worried. I mean, as you said, there was that sort of upset in the 100-meter, and then you watch Knighton and you watch him just clear the finish line with ease in his previous heats, and then he gets to the final and they're comparing him to Bolt, and you're thinking to yourself, well, Bolt previously beat De Grasse. Is there going to be another shock here, right? But he certainly looks like he's one to watch. I mean, Paris 2024 is not that far. He's going to be young. I mean, certainly I think that sprinters hit their peak later in life than maybe some other athletes, but he seems to be a kid who is really, and I say kid because he is a kid, I'm making myself feel old, but he's a kid that certainly, I think, is one to watch. Paris 2024 is not that far. You heard a Canadian Aaron Brown say today that it's like world champion, you're back at an Olympic Games. So if he's able to keep up what he's done and use the momentum from the Olympics, I think Knighton is going to be a guy who's really competing with a guy like Andre De Grasse going into Paris 2024. And you really think it's great that Andre De Grasse was able to sort of come away with this gold medal this time, because there is going to be that competition. Just because Usain Bolt is out, has retired, doesn't mean that people aren't going to be fighting for medals. And I think we've seen that at the track and field events across the board these games, in terms of veterans moving on and other people taking their places. And it's been fun to watch, but it also makes it a little bit more nerve-wracking.
Also, breaking news, Laura, we are old. Was said earlier that the youngest medalist at these games, a silver medalist in skateboarding from Japan, born in 2008.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's, I was in university, so I graduated.
I graduated university that year. I was already a couple of years into working at the Score in this wonderful industry that we call sports media. But yeah, that's where I was in 2008.
That being said, those young skateboarders are incredible. I love the addition of skateboarding, as you know, to these Olympics, and those girls rock.
Yeah, skateboarding's your new jam. Soccer and skateboarding. Damian Warner, pretty incredible. He's got real medal hopes. He leads in the decathlon, and he's got a Canadian alongside him as well.
Yeah, he does. Pierce LePage has been really fantastic over the course of the first days of events of the decathlon. The decathlon is just an event that amazes me because I just cannot believe that these athletes are able to specialize in 10 different events. I mean, you think about the swimming and about Sydney Pickram being so worried because she didn't specialize in breaststroke and she had to go out there and compete. And then you've got these guys who are specializing in 10 events. So, I mean, we knew Damian Warner was going to be a threat in the decathlon. And I think that, so far he's shown that he is the guy to beat. And Pierce LePage has really been keeping up with him, which is fantastic to see. It's good to have Canadians pushing other Canadians. And I think that, maybe more than ever before, we can think of the Canadian team or Canada as a track country because of guys like Andre De Grasse and Damian Warner, and then leading the way, and then guys like Aaron Brown and Pierce LePage pushing them to be at their best.
You're right. There's been a lot of track and field stars in Canada, but not often at the same time are there a handful. Contending for medals, contending at the World Championships. So it's been great to see from a track and field perspective. It's been great to see what Canada's done at these Olympic Games. Of course, the Canadian women have carried the flag in terms of winning the medals, bringing the medals home for Canada. Andre De Grasse adding to that and may add to it again with the relay still coming up. But the conversation of who will carry the flag at the closing ceremony, that's becoming an increasingly heated conversation because I think the faces and the contenders have changed. Sarah Pavan and Melissa Jimena-Paredes were probably considered one of the favorites just because of how the scheduling had worked out, also how incredible they had been in women's beach volleyball, having not dropped a set until they lost in the quarterfinals. So now they're out of contention for that. So is that a conversation you want to have? Who do you think is going to carry the flag at the closing ceremony?
Okay, so I got roasted on Twitter for this earlier in the week because I suggested that Christine Sinclair should be in the conversation if Canada wins gold. Both
As she should be.
Gold medal, and she would be one of maybe three people at this point, or three or four Canadians who win. But a lot of people on social media were saying, well, what about the swimmers? And I think the thing that people need to remember here at this conversation is it's only going to be athletes who are there at the end, because the swimmers are already home. Because of COVID-19 restrictions, you have to leave after a certain amount of time. So unfortunately, the likes of Maggie McNeil and Penny Oleksiak, they're just not going to be able to be the flag bearer because they can't go back. So you're talking about, a very small group of people. If Canada wins gold in soccer, I still think Christine Sinclair should be considered, both for what she's done in these games and for, what she's done over the course of her career. Andre De Grasse, of course, there are going to be people who want Andre De Grasse to be the flag bearer, and I can see why. I mean, especially if he wins the relay, he goes home, with a medal, and he's medaled in every event that he's ever been in at the Olympics. I mean, that's a pretty darn good record, right? And then Damian Warner, I mean, the decathlon makes you the ultimate athlete. If he wins the gold there, I think you have three phenomenal options. I'm going to say three, other people might say two, but I think also you need to have a woman in there. I mean, women have been the story at these Olympic Games. So if we're not considering a woman for a flag bearer after women have won the bulk of the medals, I think we're doing something wrong. But I mean, ultimately, the good thing about the flag bearer, even though we're always going to fight about it, we're always going to talk about it, hopefully having respectful conversations about who should be there, is that we're all fighting about, which athlete for Canada is best. I mean, that's not a terrible conversation to have. We're all supportive of all of these athletes who represent our country so well. It's
the appetizer to the same fight that you're going to be in when you're deciding the Lou Marsh Award winner.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's all fun. It's all fun. And you know what? If this is the worst of our problems, then we're doing pretty darn well.
Laura, it's always fun to talk with you. Thank you very much for coming on Tokyo Daily. And you thought you were nervous watching Andre De Grasse. You're going to be very nervous watching Team Canada take on Sweden in the women's soccer final.
I'm not ready. I can tell you that.
Now, at the time I'm recording this, that women's soccer final is still set to go Friday morning at 11 a.m. in Tokyo. Now, that's great for us, 10 p.m. Thursday night. Yeah, a little late, but great for us. But it just doesn't make any sense for these players to play at high noon in the heat that we've seen so far in Tokyo. Both federations have asked the IOC to reschedule the final. Logistics, definitely the sticking point, a real issue with the match set to be played in Tokyo's Olympic Stadium. Yes, track and field events are taking place into Friday night. CBC's Kelly Vanderbeek reported Wednesday morning that Yokohama is being looked at as a serious option to reschedule. check the ticker for the latest. Check thestar.com for all the latest from Tokyo. As Rosie DiMano, Dave Feshuk, and Bruce Arthur are over there writing great pieces. Bruce with a great piece about Olympic partying in the village. That'll be one to look for. Tomorrow's episode, also one to look for, as Olympic medalist swimmers Kylie Sanchez and Taylor Ruck will join me on Tokyo Daily. Thank you for joining me every day. Remember, you can watch Tokyo Daily on the Toronto Star's YouTube page and listen and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Brendan Dunlop. I'll talk to you tomorrow.